November hurricanes, a little bit more rare. We do see those landfalls here in the state, and so we'll pull up some stats here in just a second. But the good news is that there's no tropical formation expected the next 7 days. There's no areas of interest at this point that we are watching, and so there's the good news. We like to see that, but what we are talking about as we look ahead to the start of November, there is the potential for this area here, right in kind of the central Caribbean, where there is a highlighted chance that maybe we see something try and start to spin up there. And so there we have this red color here, less than a 40% chance that tropical development does form. But despite that, we could still be talking about something trying to spin up. Maybe it brings some increased rain. You can see this green color here as it kind of potentially highlights this tracking across parts of the Caribbean. And so that is actually a typical track that we see with storms that develop in November. We've got our strong ridge of high pressure. So best case scenario, they kind of follow along that and go out to the open waters. And so here's what we're watching for the start of November. This would be kind of the general area where maybe an area of low pressure in the Caribbean tries to get its act together at the start of November. But it does look like high pressure in the Atlantic is going to extend westward, and that's a main steering blocker. And so that could be guiding something more off out into the waters if we did see something develop. So this is really what we're going to be keeping close tabs on the next week or 2 weeks or so. And I was talking about where we typically see November hurricane landfalls, and really the most recent in time was back in 2022, where Nicole made landfall as a Category 1. Otherwise, right around the Miami area, Yankee back in 1935, that was a Cat 2 that made landfall. We also have Kate, 1985, that made landfall right around Panama City as a Category 2. And then we've got up into North Carolina, that one back in the 1800s as a Category 1. So it is rare for us to get a November hurricane making landfall, but it does happen, and you can kind of see we've got some areas on the table as far as we see them on the East Coast. We've also seen some of those kind of sneak into the Gulf and move up into the Panhandle. So no areas of concern at this point. And of course, we'll continue to watch and continue to keep you updated here as this hurricane season closes out November 30th. So we still have a little ways to go. But hey, how about this beautiful view to kick off our weekend, to kick off our Saturday morning? On the cool side in Clearwater, 66 for you there, 70 degrees right now in Tampa. Winds are calm, 3 miles per hour in Tampa. So wind, not much of an issue today. Maybe a breeze here or two into the afternoon, mostly less than 10 miles per hour though. And we've got high pressure all across the southeast. So that's going to keep us generally rain free for the weekend as we play your futurecast out. Other than some passing clouds, it's going to be really comfortable out there, comfortably warm. Humidity levels, they're going to be relatively reasonable. And any of the showers that try and pop up off those East Coast winds, they're not really going to amount to much. So we're really not talking anything in the way of impactful rain even through most of next week. So highs today pretty close to seasonal. We're talking about 84 to 86 for most of the greater Tampa Bay area. Low 60s for our lows tonight, but we get closer to the Bay Area where most of us will kind of be around the upper 60s. About 68 is what we're talking about in Tampa, as well as Clearwater, St. Pete areas. Nice on the water with just a light chop. East-northeast winds, 5 to 10 knots there. Seas around 2 feet, and there's your 7-day forecast. A bit breezy come the middle of next week, but should be good. Hi, everyone. I'm meteorologist Valerie Mills. Thanks for logging on to My Fox Hurricane, where things are quiet in the Atlantic Basin right now. No tropical formations and no development expected in the next 7 days. That is fantastic to see. Remember, hurricane season runs through the end of November. So even though we're closing out the month of October, we still are on high alert for any potential spin-ups that might occur. We typically see those a little bit closer to home for the months of October and November. Typically the Caribbean and off to kind of Bermuda are where our most hurricanes develop at this kind of end of the season point. So as we look ahead to the start of November, there are some signs of an area of low pressure trying to spin up in the Western Caribbean. So at this point, we're going to be watching this area that you see here in red for the potential area of low pressure to form. And you can kind of see where we've got this green color here. If anything, we might just be talking about some increased rain for parts of the Caribbean. But Odds a little bit low. Some of the models are picking up on it though. So it is something that we're going to continue to watch. And the general big picture would be an area of low pressure somewhere in the central Caribbean most likely. But then we still will have our Atlantic ridge locked into place, likely extending westward as we look ahead to kind of the first full week of November. So if we did see an area of low pressure form, it's going to be a little bit limited in where it can go just because of some of the sharp steering currents and some of the fall systems that typically actually block Florida, parts of the East Coast as well. So if this forms, it is more likely to kind of track off to the north and east, guided by this general Atlantic ridge that's going to be kind of extended out into the Atlantic. So as far as hurricanes making landfall along the state of Florida or even along the East Coast during the month of November, it is rare, but certainly not unheard of. The most recent was Hurricane Nicole back in 2022, made landfall in Vero Beach as a Category 1 hurricane. And the other two that were in the state, that was Kate back in 1985, made landfall in Panama City as a Category 2, and Yankee 1935 that made landfall in November as a Category 2. And then of course we've got North Carolina, that landfall back in 1861. So you can see very rare, but we do have a handful that have happened. And so it is something that we just have to watch for as we close out the season on November 30th. The next name in line would be Patty. We'll continue to watch things and keep you updated right here on My Fox Hurricane.